If you are familiar with bodybuilding, you are more than likely familiar with the saying, Mr. Olympias are won from the back. Is it true? Well, Samson Dauda, he won. Does he have the best back out of Hattie Shupin and Derek Lunsford and himself? Well, it's debatable. It is definitely a debate. One thing's for sure. Back in Phil Heath's day, it was Phil versus Kai Green, and there can be no doubt. Them two dudes, they absolutely had the best backs. And Phil, speaking of fiddlers Phil Heath, he won his very first ever Olympia title because he destroyed Jay Cutler from behind. Was it always that way? Well, kind of. I guess I will let you people be the judge of that. Today we are going to look at some of the best backs in bodybuilding history. And of course, you know me. We always like to rewind the clock and go back in time. This is Eugene Sandow, and if I do say so myself, this guy had an incredible back. Look at those lats. Not bad at all. Wasn't just him either. Have a look at this bloke. Anybody know who this is? I like to leave a little pause here to let you guys guess at home. It's George Hackenschmidt, and you will thank me for putting that big orange dot over his buttocks. But all jokes aside, yes, that was a joke. Look at his back. Unbelievable. Keeping in mind, this was the early 1900s. Probably like 1900 something. And then for a long time, nothing happened. Until the 1940s. Look at the back on this fella. Anybody at home? This is John Grimmick. He would have been your first ever NABA Universe Champion. An incredible back development, and I really like the way he tilted. Maybe one of the very first guys to do one of those tilted poses like that. Very thick in the back. But I did notice. I don't know if this is a rear lat spread or not. This is the strangest thing I've ever seen. It's like two big alien bumps coming out of his back. Anyway, Steve Reeves, he had a pretty decent back, I would suggest. And the thing about Reeves, he did hit those tilted thousely poses, but he also had a fan-smashing rear double biceps. And if you ask me, that was the difference between him and Reg Park. With all due respect to Reg, I believe that Steve Reeves had the superior back development. But what do I know? Here's Malvin Wells. Not many people talk about Malvin Wells. He is a thick back. You have to excuse the very impressive arms and wheels as well to notice how very thick those lats and traps really were. This is an unknown bodybuilder, John McWilliams. Anybody know any information on John McWilliams? I'm sure there'll be about 4 or 5 people in the comment section below that went to high school with him. But either way, he's holding his own against this guy here, Bill Pearl, who had maybe one of the best backs of his time. Look at him in this, just standing relaxed. You can see veins, vascularity all over those traps. This is another not talked about bodybuilder very much. Paul Winter, one of my absolute favorite bodybuilders. Former NABA Pro, Mr. Universe Champion. Here's Freddie Ortiz. He was a very all-around bodybuilder in terms of the back. Nice rear lat spread, I guess. It's better than that John Grimmick one, I can tell you that. Here is Dave Draper. Now, we're getting into the late 1960s, 70s, things of that nature, and we're definitely going to see an increase in back development. But Dave Draper, definitely worth to mention. And then we enter Sergio Oliva. And he is absolutely the best of his time. Well, most would suggest, absolutely. Look at how thick those lats are. And keep in mind, folks, for this video, we are not even considering the glutes, hamstrings, calves. We're somewhat considering the arms. But for this video, glutes, lower half, legs, out the window. Here's Sergio Oliva during his comeback, 1985, and I was always impressed with how good he kept up with his prime back development. Conditioning, not bad at all. Now, you may have noticed I had a little hesitation in my voice when I said Sergio had the best back of his time. I may take some criticism for this, some heat, if you will. But Arnold Schwarzenegger's back, very underrated. And if you look at just the back and the way he displayed it, oh, so masterfully. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I prefer his back over Sergio Oliva. Well, I guess you guys are going to have to let that digest for a little while. Keep in mind, this rear double biceps pose. 1974, look at the Christmas tree. Look at the traps. I don't believe that Sergio ever had that level of detail and condition, maybe thickness, but either way, guys, Arnold Schwarzenegger, like I said, maybe even underrated in the back development, even during his comeback, 1980. Don't look at the lower half. Remember that, guys. Look at the back itself. It's probably the best. Back double by. You think the cameraman took that picture before Dickerson hit his pose on purpose? Maybe. Now, when it comes to Lou Ferrigno, not many pictures of Lou from the 1974 Mr. Olympia. But take a look. Those traps are massive. Lats, nice, neat, clean, neat lat insertions, things of that nature. But I'll be darned, I searched for other good pictures of Lou's back, and Arnold usually had the better display. But when it comes to little Franco Columbu, and of course, I'll probably take heat for this too, I think Arnold actually did have somewhat of a superior back development than Franco Columbu. Now, here's a tilted rear double bi, and you could notice in the double biceps pose itself, Franco's lats, they do reach down a little bit further. Arnold, perhaps the better detail. But either way, definitely worth an argument. I mean, Franco Columbu, he had the thicker lats. He was a much smaller man, but my soul, look at that. Even like Arnold, too, during his comeback. His back wasn't too bad, his wheels were down in size. I think he broke one of his legs there a couple of years prior. But Franco Columbu, he'll go down in history of having one of the best backs of all time. But let's not slip into the 80s just yet. There was that period of time from the mid-70s to the early 80s. There was guys like Danny Padilla, Robbie Robinson, and who's that being out-angled? It is none other than Roy Callender. And not too many people talk about Roy Callender, but Danny Padilla, he was the first guy there, so we'll talk about him. His back double bi, unbelievable. In terms of the other shots or the other rear lat spread, things of that nature, Danny, he didn't have the best back. Robbie Robinson, as a whole, might have actually had a better back development. Maybe not quite so much in the rear double. It was close and all, but kind of preferred Danny. But the rear lat spread, wow. Take a look at those wings, will you? And then there was Roy Callender. This guy here, look at the lat insertions. Perfectly drawn out. This is a modern day Olympia winning back double bi, I'm here to tell you. And the lat spread could use a little bit more width, I'll admit. But look at the traps. Look at the lats. Roy Callender, absolutely very underrated. He could hit all those shots too. Very impressive. But we're not going to gush all over Roy Callender and Danny Padilla as well without mentioning the dude, the blonde. I was going to call him the blonde bomber. That's Dave Draper. This is Tom Platz and his back double bi. Wow. Everybody talks about his wheels, how big his legs were. But that back, pretty impressive. The back lat, kind of like Roy Callender, he had the detail, he lacked a little bit of width. But if it was width you were looking for, Lee Haney provided. Look at the width of Lee Haney's back. Now, I'll admit, he's not as shredded, conditioned as even maybe a couple of the guys we've seen prior. But this back double by, he would dwarf other gentlemen. So, truly, Lee Haney had the best back development out of the 1980s. Well, Samir Banu, he's going to hold his own with anybody. And kind of on the opposite note of an Arnold Schwarzenegger, and of course, I will absolutely take criticism for this one. I think he's a little overrated in the back. Now, his Christmas tree, it is stunning. It is the best Christmas tree ever. But let's face it, without this one picture of this rear double biceps pose, Samir Banu, he does not really impress me all that much. His back lat spread, it lacks V-taper, much like a Tom Platz. Yes, absolutely, I see the Christmas tree. I see it. And I also see a Christmas tree on Paul Grant. Very underrated back development on Paul Grant. So, he has a tree, just like Samir Banu. Does that mean he has the best back development of all time? No, absolutely not. Let us just simplify the situation by bringing on Dorian Yates. Wow. Look at that, if you will. That is not only as conditioned and peeled as a Samir Banu, but this guy in terms of width, wow. Wowzers. And yes, he did lose earlier on in his career to a guy such as Momo Benaziza, who is worth to mention. But after that loss, Dorian Yates, I mean, come on. Nobody was even close to Yates. And it wasn't like everybody had a weak back. In the 90s, Sean Ray, not bad at all in the rear double biceps. And the rear lat spread, good pose for Kevin Levrone. Flex Wheeler also exhibited a fantastic tilting rear double biceps pose here. He could hit a pretty good rear double bi. His rear lat spread, not the best. And there was Chris Cormier. He was good in both of the shots, I guess. But they would always lose to Dorian Yates. Not only was he bigger than everybody in the back development, look at the size of the traps. He was also peeled and shredded to the diced. So Dorian Yates, does he have the best back in bodybuilding history? Well, before we get to the obvious, I'll mention a couple of honorable mentions here. Mike Francois, he was pretty good in that mid to late 90s region of time, as well as Jean-Pierre Fuchs. Some people will even tell you that Jean-Pierre had a better back than Dorian. He didn't. It was big and all, but it was not as shredded. And then, of course, the obvious guy, Ronnie the King Coleman. And I don't think there's too many people that will argue that Coleman does defeat Dorian Yates in a bodybuilding competition, both at their best. But he's winning on the wheels, the glutes, the arms, chest, things of that nature. We are talking just the back. So now it is time to throw down. And remember, folks, we are ignoring the glutes, the striations, and the hamstring. If you do that, Dorian Yates, he has a pretty good chance here of actually winning. Now, Coleman, from top to bottom, he's winning. The Christmas tree and the tops of the traps, mountainous. But look at the outer lats for Yates and the center of the back, the traps, how thick they are. And before you guys get all worked up, but Mark's max muscle, you should have used 2003. Well, I don't think so. 2003, nowhere near as shapely and striated in the back development as 1999. And as far as Dorian Yates is concerned, his back relaxed position, 1997, a terrible Yates, but the back itself, not bad at all. And the rear lat spread. And of course, normally if it's close, we give it to Coleman because of the lower half. but we're focused just on the back. And if you do that, it's actually very close. Again, the tops of the traps, there can be no doubt. Ronnie the King Coleman. But look at those outer lats. How perfectly V-shaped they are. And the center of the traps again for Dorian Yates. Very impressive. But man, I don't know. Coleman is deadly when you look at the traps, things of that nature. Here's the back double. Ooh, I don't know. Are we considering the arms? If we're ignoring the arms, it's going to be different. Yates, he does not have that pop, that cartoonish, like, wow, roundness. But more striated, I don't think there's any question. I mean, you get a little finger pointer or something. The judges should have like a little poker stick to poke the bodybuilders to see how far the stick sinks in. I don't think it would sink in very far at all for Dorian Yates. And at the end of the day, I don't think there's a question. Even a strict Colemanite, a practicing Colemanite, would admit that Dorian Yates is absolutely harder, grainier in the back. Not the glutes, not the hamstrings. That's another world altogether. We're just looking at the back. Couple of other versions here, just in case there was any question. Any of you doubting Thomases, look at Yates's traps. Sure, from the rear lat spread, things of that nature, Coleman looked like he had the bigger traps. But there is a lot of meat on Yates. So, to keep things peaceful, these are the two best backs in bodybuilding history. Is that the end of the video? Well, no, absolutely not. This is Art Atwood, and I believe him to have the thickest lats in the history of bodybuilding. Look at how thick this guy is. No, he was not the most shapely creature on earth. May he rest in peace. But I mean, just imagine this guy, more conditioned or even just as conditioned as your Colemans or your Dorian Yateses. So Art Atwood, he'll go down in history for having maybe the thickest back of all time. Marcus Rule, not bad. And I know you guys will be thinking, but Mark's max muscle, you forgot Marco Savolainen. Well, little overrated. Especially when there's a guy like Joel Stubbs. Joel Stubbs. This is perhaps bigger than Art Atwood's back. Keep in mind, Joel Stubbs was something of 6'5" of that nature. And then there was Orville Burke, another very thick-backed individual. And oh my soul, this must be photoshopped. Whose back is this? Oh, you know who this is. This is Johnny O. Jackson. And he's probably one of the only guys that could look like this, just relaxed, like Dorian Yates or Ronnie the King Coleman with those traps. So absolutely Johnny O. Jackson, worth to mention. And that pretty much brings us to the beginning of the video. Kai Green, Phil Heath, and Kai Green, two of the best backs for their time. Now, I'm not saying they were going to beat Dorian Yates or Ronnie the King Coleman, but a lot of people would suggest that Phil Heath had the best back of all time. Well, I'm here to tell you, Kai Green was massive in 2013. Did not quite have the detail of Fiddler's Phil Heath. Here is the two, maybe at their best. Look at that. This is pure perfection. In the lower half too, I will admit. I'm not considering it, but obviously you can see it, and they are probably superior in that aspect, at least against Dorian Yates. Maybe not Coleman. And the back lat spread, this is where they separate, I think. I mean, it is a pretty shot for Kai Green, but he just lacked the traps. to deal with the likes of Phil Heath. And before you guys have a conniption fit, yes, Dexter the Blade Jackson, he had a pretty decent back. But this video is for the best of all time. You know, you're not going to see Jay Cutler. You will, however, see Bill Bonac. Old battling Bill Bonac. Still, this is his back now. He's like 42 in this picture. So, absolutely battling Bill Bonac. One of the best. And, of course, Samson Dauda. He is your Mr. Olympia champion. And, of course, his back is very impressive. But so is Nick Walker's. Nick, maybe the best back in the IFBB today, all around. Not a bad rear lat spread. Of course, when it comes to the rear lat spread, Hattie Shupin, he is your man. Maybe not the best in the rear double biceps pose, though. All right, Brother Derek. Brother Derek has the best all-around back of all of the competitors today. I mean, you can argue, but you probably don't have much of a case of an argument to say any of the other bodybuilders are beating him all around. Sure, maybe one of the guys will catch him in the rear lat, and maybe another guy will catch him in the rear double. But combined poses, Derek Lunsford, he's pretty darn good. Can he hold his own against the doctor? Dr. Phil, well, not bad. Phil seems to be, he has more overhang, the thickness, and the rear lat. I mean, there can be no question. Look at the traps. Look at the lats. And it is interesting that we can compare these two, the camera angles, the pictures, things of that nature. And when it comes to Coleman and Yates, side-by-side comparisons, they just really don't jive. Even, they hold their legs different, they hold their back completely different. So at the end of the day, all things considered, rear lat, rear double, and the Christmas tree, and the hard, grainy condition of the back itself, I guess Dorian Yates could be considered for having the best back of all time. And I know you Colemanites and you Phil Heath followers, you heathens, I'm sure you'll disagree, but you have to admit, it's pretty close, even for you fellers. And for a Dorianite, there can be no question. I'm kind of on the outside looking in, and I'm on the side of the Dorianites for this one. That is one good back. Hit thumbs up on the video. I hope you enjoyed this long feature. You popped your popcorn, things of that nature. Stay away from that old soda. Have water. Have a great one, folks.